Chapter 13. Have you seen the latest model? It was an off year that didn't bring a new Gilbreth baby. Both Dad and Mother wanted a large family, and if it was Dad who set the actual target of an even dozen, Mother as readily agreed. Dad mentioned the dozen figure for the first time on their wedding day. They had just boarded a train at Oakland, California, after the ceremony, and Mother was trying to appear blasé, as if she had been married for years. She might have gotten away with it, too, if Dad had not stage-whispered when he took off her hat prior to sitting down. "Good Lord, woman, why didn't you tell me your hair was red?" The heads of leering, winking passengers craned around. Mother slid into the seat and wiggled into a corner where she tried to hide behind a magazine. Dad sat down next to her. He didn't say anything more until the train got underway, and they could talk without being heard throughout the car. "I shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "It's just I'm so proud of you, I want everyone to look at you and to know that you're my wife." "That's all right, dear. I'm glad you're proud of me." "We're going to have a wonderful life, Lily. A wonderful life and a wonderful family. A great big family." "We'll have children all over the house," Mother smiled, "from the basement to the attic. From the floorboards to the chandelier. When we go for our Sunday walk, we'll look like Mr. and Mrs. P. Piper. Mr. Piper, shake hands with Mrs. Piper. Mrs. Piper, meet Mr. Piper." Mother put the magazine on the seat between her and Dad, and they held hands beneath it. "How many would you say we should have? Just as an estimate," Mother asked. Just an estimate, many." "Lots and lots." "We'll sell out for an even dozen," said Dad. "No less." "What do you say to that?" "I say," said Mother, "a dozen would be just right, no less." "That's the minimum. Boys or girls?" "Well, boys would be fine," Dad whispered. "A dozen boys would be just right, but, well, girls would be all right, too. Sure, I guess." "I'd like to have half boys and half girls. Do you think it would be all right to have half girls?" "If that's what you want," Dad said, "we'll plan it that way. Excuse me a minute while I make a note of it." He took out his memorandum book and solemnly wrote, "Don't forget to have 6 boys and 6 girls." They had a dozen children, 6 boys and 6 girls, in 17 years. Somewhat to Dad's disappointment, there were no twins or other multiple births. There was no doubt in his mind that the most efficient way to rear a large family would be to have one huge litter and to get the whole business over with at one time. It was a year or so after the wedding, when Mother was expecting her first baby, that Dad confided to her his secret conviction that all of their children would be girls. "Would it make much difference to you?" Mother asked him. "Would it make much difference?" Dad asked in amazement. "To have a dozen girls and not a single boy?" And then, realizing that he might upset Mother, he added quickly, "No, of course not. Anything you decide to have will be just fine with me." Dad's conviction that he would have no boys was based on a hunch that the Gilbreth name, of which he was terribly proud, would cease to exist with him, that he was the last of the Gilbreths. Dad was the only surviving male of the entire branch of his family. There were 2 or 3 other Gilbreths in the country, but apparently they were no relation to Dad. The name Gilbreth, in the case of Dad's family, was a fairly recent corruption of Galbraith. A clerk of court in a small town in Maine had misspelled Galbraith on some legal document, and it had proved easier for Dad's grandfather to change his name to Gilbreth, which was how the clerk had spelled it, than to change the document. So when Anne was born in New York, Dad was not in the least bit disappointed, because he had known all along she would be a girl. It is doubtful if any father ever was more insane about an offspring. It was just as well that Anne was a girl. If she had been a boy, Dad might have toppled completely off the deep end and run amok with a kriss in his teeth. Dad had long held theories about babies, and with the arrival of Anne, he was anxious to put them to a test. He believed that children, like little monkeys, were born with certain instincts of self-preservation, but that the instincts vanished because babies were kept cooped up in a crib. He was convinced that babies started learning things from the very minute they were born, and that it was wrong to keep them in a nursery. He always forbade baby talk in the presence of Anne or any of his subsequent offspring. "The only reason a baby talks baby talk, he said, is because that's all he's heard from grown-ups. Some children are almost full grown before they learn that the whole world doesn't speak baby talk." He also thought that to feel secure and wanted in the family circle, a baby should be brought up at the side of its parents. He put Anne's bassinet on a desk in his and Mother's bedroom and talked to her as if she were an adult, about concrete and his new houseboat and efficiency and all the little sisters she was going to have. The German nurse whom Dad had employed was scornful. "Why, she can't understand a thing you say," the nurse told Dad. "How do you know?" Dad demanded. "And I wish you'd speak German, like I told you to, when you talk in front of the baby. I want her to learn both languages." "What does a 2-week-old baby know about German?" said the nurse, shaking her head. Never mind that, Dad replied. I hired you because you speak German, and I want you to speak it. He picked up Anne and held her on his shoulder. Hang on now, baby. Imagine you are a little monkey in a tree, in the jungle. Hang on to save your life. Mind now, said the nurse. She can't hang on to anything. She's only 2 weeks old. You'll drop her. Mind now. I'm minding, Dad said irritably. Of course she can't hang on, the way you and her mother coddle her and repress all her natural instincts. Show the nurse how you can hang on, Anne, baby. Anne couldn't understand. Instead, she spit up some milk on Dad's shoulder. Now, is that any way to behave? He asked her. I'm surprised at you, but that's all right, honey. I know it's not your fault. It's the way you've been all swaddled up around here. It's enough to turn anybody's stomach. You'd better give her to me for a while, Mother said. That's enough exercise for one day. A week later, Dad talked Mother into letting him see whether new babies were born with a natural instinct to swim. When you throw little monkeys into a river, they just automatically swim. That's the way monkey mothers teach their young. I'll try out Anne in the bathtub. I won't let anything happen to her. Are you crazy or something? The nurse shouted. Mrs. Gilbreth, you are not going to let him drown that child. Keep quiet and maybe you'll learn something, Dad told her. Anne liked the big bathtub just fine, but she made no effort to swim, and Dad finally had to admit that the experiment was a failure. Now, if it had been a boy, he said darkly to the nurse when Mother was out of hearing. The desk on which Anne's bassinet rested was within reach of the bed and was piled high with notes, Iron Age magazines, and the galley proofs of a book Dad had just written on reinforced concrete. Mother utilized the unavoidable delay of her confinement to read the proofs. At night, when the light was out, Dad would reach over into the bassinet and stroke the baby's hand. And once Mother woke up in the middle of the night and saw him leaning over the bassinet and whispering distinctly, Is you an ittle bitty baby? Is oo a daddy's ittle bittle girl? What was that, dear? Said Mother, smiling into the sheet. Dad cleared his throat. Nothing. I was just telling this noisy, ill-behaved, ugly little devil that she is more trouble than a barrel of monkeys. And just as much fun? Every bit. Dad and Mother moved to another New York apartment on Riverside Drive where Mary and Ernestine were born. Then the family moved to Plainfield, New Jersey, where Martha put in an appearance. With 4 girls, Dad was reconciled to his fate of being the last of the Gilbreths. He was not bitter, merely resigned. He kept repeating that a dozen girls would suit him just fine, and he made hearty jokes about my harem. When visitors came to call, Dad would introduce Anne, Mary, and Ernestine. Then he'd get Martha out of her crib and bring her into the living room. And this, he'd say, is the latest model, complete with all the improvements. And don't think that's all. We're expecting the 1911 model sometime next month. Although Mother's condition made the announcement unnecessary, he came out with it anyway. He never understood why this embarrassed Mother. I just don't see why you mind, he'd tell her later. It's something to be proud of. Well, of course it is. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but it seems to me a mistake to proclaim it from the housetops or confide it to comparative strangers until the baby arrives. Still, Mother knew very well that Dad had to talk about his children, the children who had already arrived and those who were expected. In spite of Mother's protests, Dad decided that the 5th child would be named for her. Mother didn't like the name Lillian and had refused to pass the name along to any of the first 4 girls. No nonsense now, Dad said. We are running low on names, and this one is going to be named for you, whether you like it or not. I want a little Lillian. But it could be a boy, you know. Boys, Dad grunted. Who wants boys? Sooner or later there'll be a boy, Mother said. Look what happened in my family. Mother's mother had 6 girls before she produced a boy. Sure, sighed Dad, but your father wasn't the last of the Gilbreths. When Dr. Hedges came out of Mother's bedroom and announced that Mother had the 5th baby and the 5th baby were doing nicely, Dad told him that the latest model was to be named Lillian. I think that's nice, Dr. Hedges said sympathetically. Real nice. Of course, the other boys in his class may tease him about having a girl's name, but... Yes, that's true, said Dad. I hadn't thought of... He grabbed the doctor by the shoulders and shook him. Other boys? He shouted. Did you say other boys? Boys? I hate to disappoint you, Mr. Gilbreth, grinned Dr. Hedges, especially since you've been telling everyone how much you wanted a 5th girl for your harem. But this one, Dad pushed him out of the way and rushed into the bedroom where his first son was sleeping in a by now battered bassinet on a desk once again covered with galley proofs. Dad and Mother timed their books to coincide with Mother's annual intervals of unavoidable delay. Chip off the old block, Dad cooed into the bassinet. Every inch a Gilbreth. Oh, Lily, how did you ever manage to do it? Do you think he's all right? Mother whispered. He's one I think we'd better keep, said Dad. Do you know something? I didn't come right out and say so before because I didn't want to upset you, and I knew you were doing the best you could. but I really wanted a boy all the time. I was just trying to make you feel better when I said I wanted a fifth girl." Mother managed to keep a straight face. "Mercy, Maud, you certainly had everybody fooled," she said. "I thought you'd be simply furious if little Lillian turned out to be a boy. You seemed so set on naming this one for me. Are you sure you're not disappointed?" "Gee whiz," was all Dad could manage. "What should we name him?" Dad wasn't listening. He was still leaning over the bassinet, cooing. There was little doubt in Mother's mind, anyway, about what the baby would be named, and Dad clinched the matter by the next remark, which he addressed to the baby. "I've got to leave you now for a few minutes, Mr. Frank Bunker Gilbreth, Jr.," he said, rolling out the name and savoring its sound. "I've got to make a few telephone calls and send some wires, and I've got to get some toys suitable for a baby boy. All the toys we have around this house are girl baby toys. Behave yourself while I'm gone and take care of your mother. That's one of your jobs from now on." And over his shoulder to Mother, "I'll be back in a few minutes, Lily." "Farewell, next to the last of the Gilbreths," Mother whispered. But Dad still wasn't listening. As he closed the door carefully, Mother heard him bellowing, "Anne, Mary, Ernestine, Martha, did you hear the news? It's a boy, Frank Bunker Gilbreth, Jr. How do you like the sound of that? Every inch a Gilbreth, chip off the old block. Hello, Central, Central? Long distance, please. It's a boy." Having fathered one son, Dad took it pretty much for granted that all the rest of his children would be boys. "The first 4 were just practice," he'd say to Mother, while glaring with assumed ferocity at the girls. "Of course I suppose we ought to keep them. They might come in handy someday to scrub the pots and pans and mend the socks of the menfolk, but I don't see that we need any more of them." The girls would rush at him, and Dad would let them topple him over on the rug. Martha, using his vest pockets for finger holds, would climb up on his stomach, and the other 3 would tickle him so that Martha would be joggled up and down when he laughed. Number 6 was born in Providence, where the family had moved in 1912. As Dad had assumed, the new addition was a boy. He was named William, for Mother's father and one of her brothers. "Good work, Lily," Dad told Mother, but this time there was no elaborate praise, and his tone of voice indicated that Mother merely had done the sort of competent job that one might expect from a competent woman. "There's our first half dozen." And when his friends asked him whether the new baby was a boy or girl, he replied matter-of-factly, "Oh, we had another boy." Dad hadn't been there during the delivery. Both he and Mother agreed that it didn't help matters for him to be pacing up and down the hall, and Dad's business was placing more and more demands upon his time. Mother had her first half-dozen babies at home instead of in hospitals because she liked to run the house and help Dad with his work, even during the confinements. She'd supervise the household right up until each baby started coming. There was a period of about 24 hours then when she wasn't much help to anybody, but she had prepared all the menus in advance, and the house ran smoothly by itself during the one day devoted to the delivery. For the next 10 days to 2 weeks, while she remained in bed, we'd file in every morning so that she could tie the girls' hair ribbons and make sure the boys had washed properly. Then we'd come back again at night to hold the new baby and listen to Mother read The 5 Little Peppers. Mother enjoyed the Little Peppers every bit as much as we, and was particularly partial to a character named Phronsie, or something like that. When Dad's mother came to live with us, Mother decided to have number 7 in a Providence hospital since Grandma could run the house for her. 6 hours after Mother checked into the hospital, a nurse called our house and told Dad that Mrs. Gilbreth had a 9-pound boy. "Quick work," Dad told Grandma. "She really has found the one best way of having babies." Grandma asked whether it was a boy or girl, and Dad replied, "A boy, naturally. For goodness sakes, what did you expect?" A few moments later, the hospital called again and said there had been some mistake. Mrs. Gilbert, not Gilbreth, had had the baby boy. Well, what's my wife had?" Dad asked. "I'm not interested in any Mrs. Gilbert, obstetrically or in any other way." "Of course you're not," the nurse apologized. "Just a moment, and I'll see about Mrs. Gilbreth." And then a few minutes later, Mrs. Gilbreth seems to have checked out of the hospital. "Checked out? Why, she's only been there 6 hours. Did she have a boy or girl?" "Our records don't show that she had either." "It's got to be one or the other," Dad insisted. "What else is there?" "I mean," the nurse explained, "she apparently checked out before the baby arrived." Dad hung up the receiver. "Better start boiling water," he said to Grandma. "Lily's on the way home." "With that new baby?" "No." Dad was downcast. "Somebody else claimed that baby. Lily apparently put off having hers for the time being." Mother arrived at the house about half an hour later. She was carrying a suitcase and had walked all the way had walked all the way. Grandma was furious. "My goodness, Lily, you have no business out in the street in your condition, and carrying that heavy suitcase. Give it to me. Now get upstairs to bed where you belong. A girl your age should know better. What did you leave the hospital for?" "I got tired of waiting, and I was lonesome. I decided I'd have this one at home, too. Besides, that nurse, she was a fiend. She hid my pencils and notebook and wouldn't even let me read. I never spent a more miserable day." Lil was born the next day in Dad and Mother's room, where pencils and notebooks and proofs were within easy reach of Mother's bed. "I had already told everybody it was going to be a boy," Dad said, a little resentfully. "But I know it's not your fault, and I think a girl's just fine. I was getting a little sick of boys anyway. Well, this one will be named for you." And the older children, meanwhile, were becoming curious about where babies came from. The only conclusion we had reached was that Mother was always sick in bed when the babies arrived. About 4 months later, or after Lil was born, when Mother went to bed early one night with a cold, we were sure a new brother or sister would be on hand in the morning. As soon as we got up, we descended on Dad and Mother's room. "Where's the baby? Where's the baby?" we shouted. "What's all the commotion?" Dad wanted to know. "What's got into you? She's right over there in her crib." He pointed to the 4-month-old Lil. "But we want to see the latest model," we said. "Come on, Daddy, you can't fool us. Is it a boy or girl?" "What are we going to name this one? Come on, Daddy. Where have you hidden him?" We began looking under the bed and in half-open bureau drawer. "What in the world are you talking about?" Mother said. "There isn't a new baby. Stop pulling all your father's clothes out of that drawer, for goodness sakes. Whatever gave you the idea that there was a new baby?" "Well, you were sick, weren't you?" Anne asked. "I had a cold, yes, and every time you're sick there's always a baby." "Why, babies don't come just because you're sick," Mother said. "I thought you knew that." "Then when do they come?" Ern asked. "They always came before when you were sick. You tell us, Daddy." We had seldom seen Dad look so uncomfortable. "I've got business in town, kids," he said, in a hurry. "Your mother will tell you. I'm late now." He turned to Mother. "I'd be glad to explain it to them if I had the time," he said. "You go ahead and tell them, Lily. It's time they knew. I'm sorry I'm rushed. You understand, don't you?" "I certainly do," said Mother. Dad hurried down the front stairs and out the front door. He didn't even stop by the dining room for a cup of coffee. "I'm glad you children asked that question," Mother began, but she didn't look glad at all. "Come and sit here on the bed. It's time we had a talk, in the first place, about the stork. He doesn't really bring babies at all, like some children think." "We knew that." "You did?" Mother seemed surprised. "Well, that's fine. What else do you know?" "That you have to be married to have babies, and it takes lots of hot water, and sometimes the doctor does things to you that make you holler." "But not very loud?" Mother asked anxiously. "Never very loud or very often, am I right?" "No, never very loud or very often." "Good. Now first let's talk about flowers and bees." And when she was through, we knew a good deal about botany and something about apiology, but nothing about how babies came. Mother just couldn't bring herself to explain it. "I don't know what's the matter with you, Mother," Anne said afterward. "It's the first time she's ever kept from answering a question, and Daddy went rushing out of the room like he knew where something was buried." Later, we asked Tom Greaves about it, but the only reply we elicited from him was, "Stop that nasty kind of talk, you evil-minded things, you, or I'll tell your father on you." Dad assumed Mother had told us, Mother assumed she had made her point in the flowers and bees, and we still wondered where babies came from. Fred was born in Buttonwoods, Rhode Island, where we spent a summer. A hurricane knocked out communications and we couldn't get a doctor. A next-door neighbor who came over to help became so frightened at the whole thing that she kept shouting to Mother, "Don't you dare have that baby until the doctor comes." "I'm trying not to," Mother assured her calmly. "There's no use to get all excited. You mustn't get yourself all worked up. It's not good for you. Sit down here on the side of the bed and try to relax." "Who's having this baby anyway?" Dad asked the neighbor. "A big help you are." He departed for the kitchen to boil huge vats of water, most of which was never used. Fred, number 8, arrived just as the doctor did. Dan and Jack were born in Providence, and Bob and Jane in Nantucket. Dan and Jack came into the world in routine enough fashion, but Bob arrived all of a sudden. Tom Greaves had to pedal through Nantucket on a bicycle to find the doctor. Since Tom was in pajamas, having been routed from his bed, most of the island knew about Bob's birth. Once again, it was a case of baby and the doctor arriving simultaneously. By that time, all the family names for boys had been exhausted. The names of all the uncles, both grandfathers and 4 great-grandfathers, had been used. Great-uncles were being resurrected from the family Bible and studied carefully. "Now, let's run over the names of the bunkermen again," Dad said, referring to Grandma Gilbreth's brothers. "Samuel? Never could tolerate that name. Nathaniel? Too bookish. Frederick? We got one already. Humphrey? Ugh. Daniel? We got one. Nothing there." "How about the middle names?" Mother suggested. "Maybe we'll get an idea from the bunker's middle names." "All right, Moses." Too bulrushy. William, we got one. Abraham, they'd call him Aby. Irving, over my dead body, which would be quite a climb. What was your father's name again? Mother asked. John, said Dad. We got one. No, I know that. I mean his middle name. You know what it was, said Dad. We're not having any. Oh, that's right, Mother giggled. Hiram, wasn't it? Dad started thumbing impatiently through the Bible. Jacob? No. Saul? Job? Noah? David? Two Sissy. Peter? Paul? John? We got one. Robert? Mother said. That's it. We'll call him Robert. Why Robert? Who's named Robert? Dad looked over the top of his glasses at Mother, and she reddened. No one in particular. It's just a beautiful name, that's all. This one will be Robert. Dad started to tease. I knew you had a strange collection of beaux during your college days, but which one was Robert? I don't believe I remember you mentioning him. Was he the one whose picture you had with the blazer and mandolin, or was he the one your sisters told me about who stuttered? Stop it, Frank, said Mother. You know that's ridiculous. We took our cue from Dad. Oh, Mother, Robert is such a beautiful name. Why didn't you name me Robert? May I carry your books home from college, Lily dear? Why, Robert, you do say the nicest things, and so clever, too. Dad, who knew that Mother's favorite poet was Browning, and suspected where Robert came from, nevertheless, bunched the fingers of his right hand, kissed their tips, and threw his hand into the air. Ah, Robert, he intoned, if I could but taste the nectar of thy lips. When you're all quite through, Mother said coldly, I suggest we have a vote on the name I have proposed, and when it comes to discussing old flames, it might be borne in mind that that is a game two can play. I recall... We wouldn't think of blighting any schoolgirl romance, would we? Dad put in hastily. What do you say we make it, Robert, unanimously? We voted, and it was unanimous. Bob, number 11, made the count, 6 boys and 5 girls. There was considerable partisanship among the family as to the desired sex of the new baby. But boys wanted to remain in the majority, the girls wanted to tie the count at 6 all. Dad, of course, wanted another boy. Mother wanted to please Dad, but at the same time thought it would be nice to have a girl for her last child. Number 12 was due in June 1922, and that meant we would be in Nantucket. Mother had vowed she wasn't going to have another baby in our summer house because the facilities were so primitive. For a time she debated whether to remain behind at Montclair and have the baby at home there, or whether to go to Nantucket with us and have the baby in a hospital. Finally, with some foreboding because of her previous experience in Providence, she chose the latter alternative. Jane, number 12, was born in the Nantucket Cottage Hospital. Mother's 10 days in the hospital was pure misery for Dad. He fidgeted, sulked, and said he couldn't get any work done without her. Dad's business trips to Europe sometimes kept him away from home for months, but then he was on the go and in a different environment. Now at home with the family where he was accustomed to have Mother at his side, he felt frustrated and seized every opportunity to go down to the hospital and visit. His excuse to us, when we complained we were being neglected, was that he had to get acquainted with his new daughter. I won't be gone long, he'd say, and you're in charge while I'm away. He'd jump into the car, and we wouldn't see him again for hours. He had never taken such care with his dress. His hair was smoothed to perfection, his canvas shoes a chaste white, and he looked sporty in his linen knickers, his belt coat with a boutonniere of Queen Anne's lace, and his ribbed knee-length hose. Gee, Daddy, you look like a groom, we told him. Bride or stable? A bridegroom. You don't have to tell me I'm a handsome dude, he grinned. I've got a mirror, you know. Well, I've got to make a good impression on that new daughter of mine. What did we name her? Jane. At the hospital, he'd sit next to Mother's bed and discuss the work he'd planned for the autumn. Now, I want you to stay here until you feel good and strong. Get a good rest. It's the first rest you've had since the children started coming. And then in the same breath, I'll certainly be glad when you're back home. I can't seem to get any work accomplished when you're not there. Mother thought the hospital was marvelous. I would have to wait until my dozenth baby was born to find out how much better it is to have them in a hospital. The nurses here wait on me hand and foot. You don't know what a comfort it is to have your baby in the hospital. No, said Dad, I don't, and I hope to heaven I never find out. What Mother liked best about the hospital, although she didn't tell Dad, was the knowledge that if she made any noise during the delivery, it didn't matter. When Dad finally drove Mother and Jane home, he lined us all up by ages on the front porch. Jane in her bassinet was at the foot of the line. Not a bad-looking crowd, if I do say so myself, he boasted, strutting down the line like an officer inspecting his men. Well, Lily, there you have them, and it's all over. Have you stopped to think that by this time next year we won't need a bassinet anymore? And by this time, 2 years from now, there won't be a diaper in the house, or baby bottles, or playpens, or nipples, when I think of the equipment we've amassed during the years. Have you thought what it's going to be like to not have a baby in our room? For the first time in 17 years, you'll be able to go to bed without setting the alarm clock for a 2 o'clock feeding." "I've been thinking about that," said Mother. "It's certainly going to be a luxury, isn't it?" Dad put his arm around her waist and tears came to her eyes. Later that summer, when company came to call, Dad would whistle assembly and then introduce us. "This one is Anne," he'd say, and she'd step forward and shake hands. "And Ernestine, Martha." "Gracious, Mr. Gilbreth, and all of them yours? Hold on now, wait a minute." He'd disappear into the bedroom and come out holding Jane. "You haven't seen the newest model." But some of the enthusiasm had gone out of his tone because he knew the latest model really was the last model, and that he would never again be able to add the clincher, which so embarrassed Mother, about how another baby was underway.